So our topic today is about the course objective of STCW. And what is the meaning of STCW again? Okay, so STCW, that is the standard of training, certifications, and watchkeeping for seafarers. So let's talk about the revisions and updates of STCW. The International Conventions on Standards of Training, Certification, and Watchkeeping for Seafarers, or STCW, sets qualification standard for personnel on seagoing ships. STCW certifications was created to promote safety of life and property at sea and to protect the marine environment. It establishes international accepted standards of training and certifications of seafarers, ensuring that crew are qualified and fit. So, the 1970 STCW Conventions was the first to establish basic requirements on training, certifications, and watchkeeping for seafarers on an international level and entered into force 28 April 1984. Revisions to the conventions occurred in 1984, 1995, 1997, and 2010, of which major revisions were of 1995 and 2010. That's why Manila is famous because of this, what we call the Manila Amendments 2010. STCW 1995 amendments were adopted by Resolutions 1 of a Conference of Parties to the International Convention on Standards of Training Certification and Watchkeeping for Seafarers, which was convened by the IMO, or the International Maritime Organization, and met at the headquarters of the organization from 26 June to 7 July 1995. The 1995 STCW Conference adopted for seafarers training, certifications, and watchkeeping STCW code. So, contents of the STCW code. So the STCW code contains that is Part A. And what is Part A? Part A, a mandatory. Now remember, Part A is mandatory provisions to which specific reference is made in the annex to the STCW convention, in which give the detail, the minimum standards required to be maintained by the parties in order to give full and complete effect to the provisions of the STCW conventions. And Part B, recommended guidance. This is recommended guidance to assist parties to the STCW conventions and those involved in implementing, applying, or enforcing measures to give the STCW conventions full and complete effect in uniform manner. Okay, so the STCW 2010 Manila Amendments. The conventions in the code were adopted by Resolutions 1 and 2, respectively, of a conference of parties to the STCW conventions held in Manila, Philippines from 21 to 25 June 2010, and STCW conference. The amendments update standards of competence required, particularly in light of emerging technologies, introduce new training and certifications requirements, and methodological improved mechanics for enforcement of the provisions and detailed requirements on hours of work and rest. So amendments to Part B of the code were adopted at 69th, 72nd, 77th, 88th, and 81st sessions of the Maritime Safety Committee and have been promulgated by STCW Circular following STCW 6, Circular 3, 1998, Circular 4, 1998, Circular 5, 2000, Circular 6, 2003, Circular 7, 2005, and Circular 8 to 10, 2006, and what are the parts of these publications contain? So, the part of these publications contain the text of the final act of the 2010 STCW conference, the articles of the 1978 STCW conventions, and for the resolutions 1 of the STCW 2010 conference in the annex to 2010 amendments, which completely replaced the annex to the 1978 STCW conventions in the amendments thereto, and resolutions 3 to 19 of the 2010 STCW conference. So, with this Manila Amendments 2010, it means that the previous training that we are obliged to take by the parties have amended. This is today, this is what we should take for the trainings. So let's talk about the risk hour period. And risk hour period, ito yung oras ng pamamahinga ng mga seafarers. Okay, so the STCW code has been amended regarding hours of rest. So it is now in line with ILO, which is the International Labour Organizations, and United Kingdom Maritime and Coast Guard Agency requirements, known as the 2010 Manila Amendments to the STCW code, which entered into force on 1st January 2012 for all parties to the conventions. The regulations now require a minimum of 10 hours rest in any 24-hour period and 77 hours in any 7-day period. So it means, let me explain to you, the minimum of 10 hours rest. For 24 hours per day, you must have a 10 hours rest, and that is the minimum. But sad to say, these regulations has never been done in the inter-island vessels or the domestic vessels. As of today, this is what I've heard. But if you are working or on board international vessel, this is practiced normally by all shipping agency. Yeah. Okay, so yung 77 hours in any 7-day period, ito yung 1 week, so 7 days. So it means 77 hours, that is 10 days for 10 hours per day for 77 hours in a week. And a minimum, number 1, a minimum of 10 hours rest is required to be provided in any 24-hour period. So yun yung minimum na rest ng isang seafarers, 10 hours within 24-hour period. And number 2, the period of rest will be divided into no more than 2 periods, one of which shall be at least 6 hours in length. So this means that in 24 hours, they can divide it in 2 periods only. For the 2 periods, it means you will work 6 hours, rest for 6 hours, work for 6 hours, and rest for 6 hours, and that is completely the 24 hours. So, and number 3, interval between consecutive periods of rest shall not exceed 14 hours. So, in 2 days time, and consecutive 2 days, intervals between consecutive periods of rest shall not exceed 14 hours. Okay? And the minimum, as I've said, a minimum of 77 hours rest is required in any 7-day period. So that is, per day is 10 hours. A seafarers must be granted a compensatory rest period in case she is required to be on call during this hour. This normally happen during emergencies, and even you are at risk, you are required or you are obliged to comply to the call of the emergency. But like example, but for the training, it's like for the drills, operations like lifeboat drills, or piping drills, and drills, prescribed by national laws and regulations should be conducted in manner to ensure minimum disruption of the rest period. You know, this training of gift is an obligation by the seafarers, and it's up to your master or to the captain how he can give you the schedule that will not interrupt your rest period. Ito, maano nito, mararanasan nito during the international voyage, but as I've said before, sa inter-island, depending on interview that are made to those cadets on board Montenegro, Star Wars, they don't have this rest hour period. Sabi nga, for the meantime, kunting tiis. Dahil ito ang stepping stone ninyo. So, let's continue this one. A number of ship's working hours and hours of rest for crew members in all positions must be displayed in place of easy accessibility to purpose of informing the seafarers in due time. So, dapat nga, nakapost ito, parang bulitin po ito nakapost ito sa alleyway on hallways ng barko, and then you will know the schedule. And also, a log recording number of hours of work and rest for every crew member must be maintained at all times. This is one record that the first state control might ask from the captain, where is the log recording number rest hour of the seafarer. Okay, and however, an exception can be made to all the above mentioned clauses in case the master of the ship deemed it necessary to require services of several lieu of maintaining the safety of the ships, especially on emergency basis. As I've said before, during emergency nga, kung ano man ang ginagawa mo, kahit rest hour ka, if the emergency alarms sounded, then you have to respond on this emergency. For the deck and engineers officers, along with apprentice engineers, may be required to work in excess of the above mentioned limit, all of which shall be considered as overtime. For this hour of overtime work, the officer will be entitled to compensatory hours of rest and overtime remunerations. But this is one thing that we never know, because in other shipping company, the deck cadets or engine cadets are not, I might say they are not entitled for the compensations of this overtime works. So it depends on your officers if they give you something, but you can see in your contract that it is not included. Okay, so it should be noted that all the above mentioned provisions shall vary for seafarers below 18 years of age, and for all such crew members, how many hours to work on ships shall be governed by a separate set of laws, which says working hours on ships should not exceed 8 hours per day or 40 hours per week. Overtime above this limit is allowed only under unavoidable circumstances and under no conditions can be allowed on a regular basis. Sufficient time shall be provided for cost of meals with at least 1 hour for the main meal of the day. So, yung rest hour, during mealtime, siyempre hindi siya kasama. And yung 15 minutes break, dapat hindi rin siya kasama. A 15 minutes rest period shall be allowed after a period of 2 hours. So, after 2 hours, you must have a 15 minutes break. So, exception in the above provisions can be made if the effective training schedules or post problems with watchkeeping duties, especially in the engine room in catering department. Any exceptions made shall be duly recorded and compensated. And according to the Maritime Labor Conventions 2006, these conditions of ship working hours shall be followed by all member nations of the conventions by means of setting the maximum number of work hours or a minimum number of rest hours a limit which shall not be exceeded in a given period of time. So these hours apply to all vessels that all under one or all of below mentioned categories. Ito yung publicly or privately owned, engaged in voyage by sea, engaged in commercial maritime operations, that is example, transport of cargo or passengers for purpose of trade. But these rules is not applicable for vessels of traditional design such as junk and those vessels of less than 500 gross tonnage registered tonnage, that is registered tonnage sa 500 gross registered tonnage, vessels engaged in fishing operations and estuarial craft. Of course, vessels engaged in fishing operations, you cannot apply the rest hour. Okay? And let's go to the alcohol and drugs. This is one of the thing or amended done for the STCW 2010 convention, because before ang alcohol at saka drugs is very rampant sa barko. And now, because of those incidents that happened before, inano na nito, ginawa namin nilang isang regulation. So, alcohol and drug consumption about on board, alcohol and drug consumption on board, taking prevention measures. Any level of alcohol consumption or illegal drugs by crew members on board has implications for the safety of the vessel, the crew, and any passengers. Even small quantities of alcohol have been shown to sufficiently impair several fitness for duty and increase the risk of accident. And as such, regulations A/1 would A/1 and B/1 of the STCW Conventions as amended in June 2010, the Manila Amendments brought in new provisions on fitness for duty, and that is the alcohol limits. The consumption of alcohol on board ship is being progressively phased out through strict regulations and screening. The majority of organizations enforce a non-alcohol policy on board the ship, while PEC is for state control. Officers may carry out random alcohol tests on crew member. So, itong let me explain what is happening on the vessels, the consumption of alcohol. Lalo na kung nagkakaroon ng mga insidente o nagkakaroon ng trouble, siyempre kukuhaan kayo ng alcohol content sa inyong dugo. At pag nagkakaroon din ng insidente o aksidente sa labas o while navigation time, ang first step is sasampa sa barko and then kukuhaan kayo ng alcohol test. At pag nagkaroon kayo ng positive content, ito ang isang masakit na pangyayari sa buhay ninyo bilang settler. Then I will continue. The adverse effect on personal health and general safety on board are also compelling reason for avoiding not only alcohol consumption but also drug abuse. Okay, sa alcohol kasi nagkakaroon ng drug abuse. Lalo na nung unang panahon na ang medicine chest natin sa barko is kept by the second officer. And being a master of the vessel, I have known that there are some drugs on our medicine chest. But ito, bago namin ibigay sa ating tripulante o sa seafarers, we are calling first the guidance of the assured medical officer. Kung pwedeng ibigay, and then pag nagano sila ng consignal, then ibibigyan namin sila. Of course, that is recorded. Naka-record lahat ng ibibigay natin sa mga separar na nangangailangan ng mga gamot na pwede natin sabihin drug para sa mga nangangailangan. A separar can expect little sympathy for their employer or the authorities if in positions of producing illegal substance, and also I will explain it to you. Before you board on the vessel, nagkakaroon tayo ng mga medical examine tayo, maraming ultrasound, lahat ng klase ng medical is dadaanan natin bago tayo makasakay ng barko. At ang masakit dito, pagka may maintenance kayo gamot na required talaga, pag sinabi mong maintenance, that is daily, kasama na sa buhay mo. Ngayon, nagkakaroon ng problema rito ng mga agency. Pag you are already consuming maintenance medicine, minsan hindi ka na nila i-hire. Kaya dapat kayo pala mag-ingat na kayo sa inyong mga katawan. Iwasan na yung mga bisyo na nakakasira ng katawan. Dahil oras na nagkakaroon kayo ng maintenance, mahihirapan na rin kayo umalis. Dahil merong company na, mga foreign companies, na ayaw nila na may maintenance. Like me, I have already maintenance medicines for my diabetic. And of course, because I'm a master, but still, I want, or the company want to be informed kung ano ba yung mga medicine na binabaon ko sa barko. Ganyan din kayo. Pag binayagan kayo ng agency na mag-join sa barko, pag sampan nyo sa barko, ibibigay din ninyo ang listahan ng gamot ninyo sa kapitan ninyo. Para just in case, may sumampala ng inspector ng prostate control, meron kayong katibayan na it was reported to the master. Okay, let's continue about this one. Also, legislation with severe penalties. Ito na yung mga penalties Also, legislation with severe penalties where drugs in alcohol are adjudged to have contributed to an accident is being introduced worldwide on an increasing scale. Penalties imposed not only cover injuries to personnel and damage to property, but also the enormous cost involved in preventing or cleaning up damage to the environment. Reports from the United States National Transportation Safety Board quote numerous cases in which alcohol and other drug use has been a factor in aviation, marine, and highway accident. Okay, so kaya nga nausap itong mga pagbabawal na to, yung mga previous years, kagaya ng isang barko ng ESO tanker na milyon o $1 million ang ginastos nila sa cleaning ng environment. Nagkaroon kasi sila ng pollution at ang cause nga ay under the influence ng alcohol ang mga watch officer. So kaya lahat ng pangyayari sa labas, ang naapektuhan ngayon ay yung mga generations kayo ng mga nagbabarko. Kaya maraming pinagbabawal. Okay, so the amended 2010 STCW Conventions requires administration should put in place adequate measures to prevent drug and alcohol abuse. There is also a mandatory requirement for the administrations to establish a limit of not greater than 0.05% blood alcohol level. Nasa ano yan? Sa dugo yan. Or 0.25 mg milligrams per liter alcohol in the breath, or a quantity of alcohol leading to such alcohol concentrations. Or ito yung breath analyzer lang na ginagamit din namin sa barko pag kami nagpapaalam sa akin ng sir, I want to go ashore. Okay, and if you saw them going back to ship at parang sober, then that is the time you have to take this alcohol content by breath analyzer. Ito yung mga ginagamit sa mga highway dapat natin, highway patrol, yung mga breath analyzer. Pero ang kailangan ko tingnan niya, 0.25 milligrams per liter of alcohol. Ito kasi madali. Yung isa naman, yung blood alcohol, dugo naman ang kinukuha doon. So yung alcohol leading to such alcohol concentrations for master, officers, and other seafarers while performing designated safety, security, and marine environmental duties. So yung guidelines in part B of the STCW code on what skippers recommend seafarers should not consume any alcohol within 4 hours of going on watch. So ito yung depende sa company ninyo. Kasi merong company na kagaya nga ng company ko that is zero alcohol policy. Ngayon kung napasampa kayo sa mga company na allowed pa rin ang pag-inom pero limited, dapat 4 hours before you are going to watch ay hindi ka na umiinom. Kasi sa 4 hours sa duration na yun, yung nainom mo na bago medyo mawawala na yun. Mababawasan na, hindi kagaya nung papunta ka ng watch, hindi pa rin ang inom mo, at doon na yung nangyayari ang mga accident eh. And so, sa paano pa prevention, so promoting prevention, any administration has the following responsibilities to protect the health and safety of people on board. Okay, so we will discuss other topics next session. Okay, thank you.